Hi, my name is Justin Nickbach, and this is my action research presentation. I am currently a third grade teacher in the Allentown School District, and this is where I implemented my action research project. This is my third school year teaching third grade. This is the final course in my graduate program where I'm earning a master's in assessment, curriculum, and teaching with a concentration in STEM education. The purpose for this action research project was to analyze the impact revising math exit tickets have on students' academic growth, to implement opportunities for revision in the classroom, help students work towards mastery of multiplication facts and strategies, and implement formative assessment strategies in the classroom, specifically exit tickets. I drew inspiration for this action research project from our ACTE coursework and specifically our engineering design class. The engineering design process focuses on reiterative steps where students have the opportunity, or engineers have the opportunity, to go back and revise and make improvements. And implementing exit tickets in the classroom, I wasn't going over them, and I felt like implementing this action research project gave them more purpose and the opportunity to be more impactful for my students. Therefore, my research question was, how does regular revision of formative assessments impact students' mastery of multiplication facts and strategies? Looking into the background research, I found some studies that really helped to ground and outline my action research project. First, a study by Mueller et al. 2014 explored actions teachers can take in the classroom to promote mathematical reasoning. Students were working in groups of 4 through tasks guided by various teachers, like questioning, listening, and throughout the study, students were exposed to tasks that would challenge their thinking in order to encourage these higher order thinking skills. After students understood the questioning and listening strategies used during the study, they became more likely to reflect on their ideas. I was hopeful that students would be likely to reflect on their exit tickets and use their mathematical reasoning to analyze their mistakes and improve them moving forward. Fowler et al. 2019 collected data when 13 middle and high school teachers implemented exit tickets into their classroom. These teachers then analyzed concerns they had, where there were downfalls in the exit tickets, and then created some guidelines to help refine the implementation of exit tickets in their classroom, like keeping them short and concise, providing clear directions, and explaining the purpose of exit tickets. PROSED 2020 discussed the importance of mathematical mindsets and specifically the importance of revision in the mathematics classroom. This was done in an undergraduate course, and student assignments were graded as pass or revise. And this ultimately encouraged students to make improvements to their work, and students weren't just submitting an assignment, but they were working toward mastery. And I thought this was impactful in my research because I'm working toward students' mastery of multiplication. I don't want them to just pass a test or an assignment. That's a foundational skill that they'll use moving forward in mathematics and in life. ACTE and SIAD 2020 identified how assessment measures including agree and disagree circles, think, peer, shared, exit tickets influence student achievement, so focusing on some different formative assessment strategies. The participants in this study were divided into 2 conditions, where one group was assessed with a traditional assessment measure, and the other was assessed with formative assessments. And ultimately, the formative assessments, the students had greater achievement, and specifically the think, pair, share. And this is where I took inspiration to have my students collaborate with each other as they were revising their exit tickets. Atali et al. 2016 discussed the difference between open-ended and multiple choice test questions when students receive immediate feedback and have the opportunity to revise their test questions. And it showed that when students were completing an open-ended question, they were more likely to put more effort up front versus a multiple choice test question where it's easier for them to guess. And so when I was picking exit tickets for this action research project, I purposely picked exit tickets that were open-ended and require students to apply critical thinking strategies. The design of my project, so like I said, this was implemented into my third grade classroom. I currently have 20 students. I have 17 in-person students and 3 virtual students as I'm teaching concurrently. However, one of my students, my in-person students, I omitted from my data analysis due to excessive absences. This student was absent for over half of my data collection period, and my 3 virtual students were omitted just because of work completion and not turning in assignments. I collected qualitative and quantitative data throughout this action research project. So my quantitative data was the pre and post test students completed, as well as the exit tickets at the end of each lesson that students would then revise the next day. And as I mentioned, students were able to collaborate with a partner during this revision process. Students were able to pick a partner on different days that worked better due to absences and just student need based on different exit tickets. There were also times where the students were collectively struggling that we would go over specific problems as a class just because they needed more reinforcement and support from me as the teacher. And lastly, for qualitative data, I collected observations from my students' performance during the revision process. And so I used the criteria of if students were engaged and collaborating with their partners, students reflecting on their exit ticket and working to make revisions, and asking clarifying questions to their partner or a teacher. I had each student labeled student A, student B to protect their confidentiality, but those are the criteria I took notes on during this process. So here is an example of the pre-test. This was the Chapter 5 review/test at the end of the Chapter 5 in the Go Math curriculum. I use this as a pre-test at the beginning of my action research project, and my students overall struggled with this assessment. There was a lot of students that left questions blank, didn't complete the questions, and that I decided to align questions on the pre-test with questions on the post-test when completing my data analysis. So the post-test was a district-selected assessment from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Publishing Company, and like I said, I aligned specific questions to measure specific skills on this assessment. Here are examples of the exit tickets that I used to at the end of each lesson. I used a combination of exit tickets that align with the Go Math lessons and the Not So Wimpy Teacher supplemental curriculum, and I chose to incorporate some supplemental lessons just to meet my students' needs. I am teaching at a Title I school, and a lot of my students, especially because of the pandemic, they're behind, and I have a range of students going from a kindergarten to third grade ability level, and so I had to fill in some knowledge gaps there. So for my findings, this addresses, like I said, the pre and post test. So including questions 17 from the pre-test and question 19 from the post-test. They are both an open-ended question that I graded on a scale of 4 points. As you can see on the pre-test, all of the students scored 0 out of 4 points, and there were students that did not even attempt to answer this question because they didn't even know where to begin. However, you can see on the post-test, 9 out of 16 students scored points, and all students attempted to answer the question even if they didn't score any points. Figure 2 shows questions that require students to identify an unknown factor. So this is question 6A and 6B on the pre-test, and question 14 and 16 on the post-test. 6 out of the 16 students improved their scores, and 9 students had the same score on the pre and post test. So there was some progress in this area, but this is a concept that, looking at the data, I will need to continue to reteach in my classroom. And figure 3 focuses on multiplying a single digit by a multiple of 10. So this aligns questions 6D, 7, and 8 on the pre-test with questions 3, 4, and 12 on the post-test. And the bar graph shows how many questions students scored correctly out of 3. So 14 out of 16 students improved their score from the pre-test to the post-test. So I feel like that is a pretty significant improvement. And 9 out of 16 students scored 3 out of 3 points on the post-test. So then they're showing understanding of this component of the test. And lastly, I have the exit ticket. So here are 5 exit tickets that my students completed during this action research process. Student performance consistently increased after students revised their exit tickets. You can see all of the scores for the first attempt on the exit ticket are below 40%, one of them even going below 20%, but all of the, after the revisions, all the students, the average was above 90% on the exit tickets. So students' motivation to complete their exit tickets became noticeably more positive throughout the qualitative observations. When students collaborated with their peers, they were more comfortable asking questions, and they became more confident during this process. So overall, the revision process is beneficial to students correcting their mistakes and encouraging their confidence. Students' scores were increased on their exit tickets during the revision process, as well as from the pre-test to the post-test. So I feel like implementing this revision process in the classroom can be very effective. Moving forward in my classroom, I want to continue implementing exit tickets after each lesson to formatively assess students' understanding and continue the revision process, because it gave students a opportunity to ask questions and revise their mistakes. And I feel like there was a lot of light bulb moments during this process where students were understanding the skill, or where they made their mistake, or where they had a misconception. I want to continue to incorporate open-ended questions on exit tickets. My students still need continued practice with open-ended questions, and eliminated the variable of guessing. So when students were having success on these, it's showing a greater understanding than answering a multiple choice question where they could have just guessed. And students were also given the freedom to use a variety of strategies, and they could discuss with their peers and compare strategies as well. And implementing the revision process can be impactful in other content areas that I teach, because I teach all subject areas. And lastly, I want to repeat the action research project with another math unit. Like I said, I used resources from Go Math and Not So Wimpy Teacher, and I feel like it would have just been more consistent to use one program rather than having to do supplemental lessons. And then I included my references at the end. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to any feedback or questions. Thank you.